Well, I'm glad you said that, Archie, because you've been instrumental in a group called the Iowa New Readers. And something very important to me is, if you would, please share with us, how did the Iowa New Readers come about, and what are some of the highlights? You've been instrumental with that group, so would you tell us, about that?
Well, as I was being tutored, and I would ask my tutor actually a lot of questions about dyslexia, and which I had been tested, and I was found to be very dyslexic at the University of Iowa hospitals, and so I wanted to know more about dyslexia. And Maxine, one day she come in with a flyer, and there was going to be a dyslexic conference in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and she encouraged me to go. So I did, and I went to this meeting, and people were very friendly and welcomed me there, and they kept introducing me to other people, and all these people seemed to be professionals. Well, finally I asked them, I said, well, where are the dyslexics? Well, you're it. And I thought, oh man. I said, I really came here to meet some dyslexics. But they were very nice to me, and they encouraged me to come back. And I can remember, as time went on, I felt comfortable being around this group, that they actually asked me to go to a conference. It was a national conference in Minneapolis. And so we got to the conference, and I could see two of the people from our state, and they had this man, and they brought him over to me, and they said, well, we have a dyslexic we want you to meet. And of course at this time I felt pretty good about myself, because I had the opportunity to go out and give some talks about my reading problems, and I thought, boy, I'm making some progress here, and I introduced myself, and I was telling him about some of the talks and speeches and some of the things I was doing, and well, he said, I said, what do you do? And he said, well, he had a PhD in physics at one of the schools in South Dakota. And I thought to myself, wow, I could never do that. I thought, I think I'm going to quit. And I told my wife. She said, well, did you ever want to be a professor and teach physics anyway? And I said, no. And so I got involved. So I had some experiences. And, well, to go back a little bit further, there was, back in 1988, I believe it was, there was a few adult learners from some different states, and they talked, some of the literacy organizations having an adult literacy congress, and so every state could send 2 people with literacy problems to this congress. And
that was a national congress?
That was a national literacy congress, and they actually had 4 of them. And I was actually fortunate to get to go to the last one. I think it was in 1993 or somewhere, or 4 right in there.
Did you volunteer, or?
No, Miriam Temple, who had your position. Well, your
she was with the Department of Ed?
Yeah, the literacy coordinator could nominate people, and she picked them out. Well, I was fortunate enough to get to the last one. Well, in 1990, Miriam Temple come up with the idea, and the Iowa Literacy Council supported her, and they all worked, and they put together this state literacy conference, and there was quite a group, and basically back then it was pretty much all adult literacy. English the second language was not the big thing at that time. There wasn't as many of them around, but there was a lot of adults, more adults now then than there is now in the literacy programs. And most of those people, the different community colleges could send delegations to the state conference. And so they, my director, Jane Hobart, volunteered two of a guy by the name of Steve Bartman and myself, and we helped Miriam and worked with the Literacy Council to plan the conference. And well, when we got there, everybody was asked to introduce themselves and say a little bit about themselves and their program. And you could look around the room and you could see the people and the faces of the people. And you could see that they didn't want to do that. I mean, they had never been to a conference before. And you could see the pain in their faces when they had to introduce themselves as someone who struggled with reading. And it was really painful. But being that I had some experiences with going to conferences, so I was in charge of, we broke off in different groups, family literacy and workplace literacy and different things. And I was in charge of workplace literacy, and they brought a group, everybody was assigned to one group, and they brought a group of people in, and I couldn't get them to say anything. We kept talking, and it was like I was just talking to myself. And as the day went on, eventually a few people started talking, and by the end of the day, everybody all of a sudden they realized that they weren't alone. These were all people like, we were all alike. And then all of a sudden I couldn't get anybody to shut up. And it was just like an explosion. But there was probably more time that people didn't talk than did. And when it was over with, I said, well, what are we going to do next year to Miriam? She said, oh, we probably won't have one. She didn't feel it was that successful. And so Steve and I, we talked to her and pretty much got down on her knees and begged to have it. And so finally she consented. And the next year when the adults came, they were ready. They were ready to talk. And they were ready to talk to each other and find out what they'd done, people had been doing for a whole year. And then all of a sudden, we were a family. I mean, we were friends. And we grew together. I mean, and actually, as the years went by each year, we were actually teaching each other the skills that we had and the things that we were successful with. And we shared ideas. And then eventually we started doing presentations to each other. And some of the people started getting pretty good. And we just, this was year after year. And well, finally we decided to get outside the box. And so some of us went into some of the churches, and then at some of the conferences, we'd come a day early and we'd go to some of the schools here in Des Moines, and we would read to the kids there, and we'd tell them the problems we had, and you could see those kids, especially the ones that had problems with reading, you know, there's somebody that made it, that's still going, and there is hope. And some of the teachers called us aside and said, did you watch this kid here and how he listened to you? He says, he usually don't sit there in class. He usually wiggles around, but when you guys talk, he sat and listened. And she says, I can't believe it. And then eventually some of the service clubs and the churches started inviting in, and then some of the schools and the colleges, and we just kept growing. And actually, some of us went in to give some of the GED graduation speeches in the prisons. And so, you know, we came a long way.